Good morning. It's Friday morning. Today we're going to look at Luke 15:11 through 32, the parable of the prodigal son. There was a man who had two sons, and the younger of them said to his father, "Father, give me the share of property that's coming to me." And he divided his property between them. Not many days later, the younger son gathered all he had and took a journey into the far country. And there he squandered his property in reckless living. And when he had spent everything, a severe famine arose in that country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to one of the citizens of that country, who sent him into his fields to feed pigs. He was longing to be fed with the pods that the pigs ate, and no one gave him anything. But then he came to himself and said, "How many of my father's hired servants have more than enough bread, but I perish here with hunger? I will arise and go to my father, and I will say to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Treat me as one of your hired servants.' And he arose and came to his father. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and felt compassion, and ran and embraced him and kissed him. And the son said, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son.' But the father said to his servants, 'Bring quickly the best robe and put it on him, and put a ring on his hand and shoes on his feet. And bring the fatted calf and kill it. And let's eat and celebrate, for this my son was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found.' And they began to celebrate. Now his older son was in the field, and as he came and drew near to the home, he heard music and dancing. And he called one of his servants and asked what these things meant. And the servant said, 'Your brother has come, and your father has killed the fatted calf because he's received him back safe and sound.' So he was angry and refused to go in. But his father came out and entreated him. But he answered his father, 'Look, how these many years I have served you, and I never disobeyed your command, and yet you never gave me a young goat, that I might celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours comes home, who has devoured your property with prostitutes, you kill the fatted calf for him.' And the father said to him, 'Son, you are always with me, and all that is mine is yours. It was fitting to celebrate and be glad, for this your brother was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found.'" Well, there's a whole bunch that we could say about this parable. I would recommend to you that you find a copy of a little book by Tim Keller. And Tim Keller is a conservative Presbyterian pastor in New York City who's done a great deal of good work with his church in the city. And he wrote a little book on the parable of the prodigal son. I think that's the name of it, but I'm not certain. But it's easily available, and it's a great little book that will tell you most of these things in much more detail. Several things about this parable stand out, though. First of all, when the younger son asks for his share of the inheritance, the father doesn't simply, say, "Okay, here's 100,000, go in peace." The father has to actually declare himself dead and divide his estate. So it's a big deal, and it's kind of insulting for the young brother to do that. So there's one thing. But the father does it. Then the young man runs off and spends the money on whatever, wine, women, and song, and then gets a job feeding the pigs, and he wants to eat what the pigs eat, and he realizes, "Oh, I should go home and work for my dad. At least they can eat." So he's going home, and he's got this prepared speech he's going to make. "I'm not even your son anymore. I'm just a hired hand." But the father sees him coming from a long way off, sees him coming down the road, and the father goes running. And the picture you paint is your father's this overweight guy in a bathrobe, and he's running down the dirt road and hugging the son, and the son is trying to make the speech, and the father's like, "Oh, shut up, shut up, shut up," and yelling at the servants to go, start a party, and all of this good stuff. It's really the father who is prodigal. See, we think of prodigal as meaning somehow somebody who does things they shouldn't do and then repents, or just does things they shouldn't do. Prodigal means overly generous. So it's not the son who's prodigal. It's really the father who just can't stop loving the son, even though he's been, insulted him in a shame-based culture, had him declare himself dead, and then goes off and spends all the money. And so you think, wow. Then the older brother comes home and he gets all, because, you never gave me a fatted calf. And he's like, you've been here all the time. You could have had anything you wanted. But here your brother, so he's not even, the older brother is not even generous enough to recognize that his younger brother has returned. All he's doing is keeping track, of well, you never did this for me and you did it for him. And when you get into that, that's no way to be a kid. You can't keep track of who does what for whom. It's just not, it's not ever going to look fair. So don't worry about that stuff. Well, anyway, so the older brother's, sort of standing outside all, angry and ticked off because the father's treated the younger brother differently. And the father's like, come on in, party, have a good time. Your brother's back. We're going to have a wonderful time. You hope the older brother did go in, but we don't really know. So what does all this mean? The Father, God the Father, is prodigal. He gives grace to everybody. He gives it to the sinner, the young son who's been off with the prostitutes and whoever, and he gives it to the self-righteous, priggish older brother, and he gives it to all of us. That's the good news. Have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow.